Hey guys, welcome back to AutoTechNick. We're continuing on the jet boat project, and for me, there's one big hurdle that I really have left that I'm just dying to get over, and that's getting this bilge gel coated. But before we do that, we need to do some experimenting and testing. I'll show you what I got. Now I've talked about this quite a bit, that I plan on gel coating the bilge, but I haven't gone into too much detail on what I have planned. All I've really discussed is I plan on gel coating from this point rearward and up on the transom. So I know that gel coating this bilge is a pretty ambitious project. I'm making it harder on myself because I plan on not doing just one color, but I plan on doing 3 colors back here. And I'm basically gonna try to mimic an appearance or a look where it's gonna be panel painted, meaning there's gonna be one base color and then all these flat sections like the floor here, the center section, the other section of the floor, and the transom are kind of like inlaid panels that set in there. So let's go back here on the transom where I've already peeled the plastic off the boat so we can talk about the colors a little bit. Now with the 4 colors that I have on the gel coat of the boat, I'm only going to use 3, and I'll be using this cream white, which will be basically the panels that I plan on putting in. I'm going to use this lighter brown, which is going to be the stringers essentially, and then I'm going to use this orange to break those 2 colors up with a small stripe. I haven't decided if that stripe's going to be 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. That's part of what we have to figure out today. So I have a lot of experience in auto body and painting cars, but I'll tell you what, gel coat, not much experience at all. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this. One is I want to try to apply the gel coat in a specific way to see if it'll work. I'll get to that in a little bit later. 2, I want to get familiar with the products and see how it's going to lay out and just kind of get used to the kickoff time, the masking, and the process before I tackle something as ambitious as the back of this boat. Now I mention this because I'm gonna try to bridge my knowledge that I have of how to do the custom paint on cars and painting multiple colors and how it all blends in with what little knowledge that I think I have of how the gel coat on the boats work. But it's a little tricky because what I'm trying to do, there's not a lot of information about it. I've done as much research as I can. I've talked to as many people I can that are more experienced than I in gel coat, and all of them have been receptive to the ideas that I have, but I've not come across anybody that's tried what I'm going to try to do. And it's kind of just blending the 2 techniques. I think it's going to work, but I'm not going to commit myself to the bilge and try it. We're going to do the test panel today. Now, all of us know that they spray this gel coat on the boats in the mold, and they basically do the gel coat first and then do the layup of the boat. Therefore, all this gel coat is perfectly smooth and flush, and there's no bumps, ridges, or lines or anything of the nature. My goal is to have this same finish inside the bilge. I don't want raises or steps, and that's going to change how I'm going to apply this gel coat. Now initially when I was thinking of doing this project, I was planning of putting a layer over the entire surface area like you would a car. So I would take the light brown and I would go ahead and just cover the stringers and all the areas of the transom that I wanted to be light brown. I let that go ahead and cure and kick off. I now would have to sand that again so the next color of gel coat will adhere to it, since I have to use a wax additive on it. So I'd have to sand it and then mask the areas that are already brown that I didn't want to be brown, and then say maybe put the white on top of that. Once that cures, I would have to go ahead and sand the white and the brown so that way I could add the orange stripe in, and I would achieve the final product that I want, but there would be steps or ridges in between the transition of each color, which is what I do not want. Now I did have one suggestion where they said that I could go ahead and lay down all the colors, and then once that's done, just go ahead and sand it and then lay down a clear gel coat over the top of it, which would then get rid of those ridges. But I'm expecting to have to color sand this gel coat and polish it when I'm done, and that process sounds like a lot of sanding. I would have to sand it after I spray the base orange, I'd have to sand it after I spray the white, I'd have to sand it after I spray the light brown, then I have to sand it for the clear, and then after the clear is on, I'd have to sand it and polish that. I've spent enough time sanding this bilge, that didn't sound appealing. I wanted to see if I could maybe mask it and panel paint it. Now, I wanted to do that because it's going to save time on sanding, although I'm going to spend a tremendous amount more time masking, which right now I'd rather do. But if this method works, it's going to help me in the future repair my dash. So if you notice, I don't like this gauge that's over here. This gauge is too low. I don't like the location of the switches. Down the road, when I put new gauges in the boat, I want to go ahead and completely rework this, which means I'm going to have to fix the gel coat. Well, again, all of these colors and lines are smooth. So if my method works today, it's going to allow me to go ahead and patch in these gauges and put the placement of all the new gauges where I want. And then I can re-gel coat the dark brown, the orange, the light brown. And when I sand it, I'll sand it smooth so then there's no step. And then on the cream up here, I'll be able to just blend that cream. So I'll be able to butt it up against this orange and then blend it out. And I'll have one blend, a polish, and you'd never know that it's been repaired. I don't know if it's going to work. So let me bring you to the panel and I'll show you in a little bit more detail what I'm thinking. Now before I get into this test panel and what I have planned on doing, I kind of wanted to mention some things that why I think this is a little bit different and gets a little bit more complicated. Now most times, or any time that I've talked to people that have done gel coat, specifically multiple color layups and gel coat, not a lot of them have done them outside of a mold. They've done them inside a mold. So that process is pretty straightforward, where you have to go ahead and be very methodical on your layout of your masking, and then you go ahead and you don't have to worry about the wax additive and the gel coat because it doesn't need anything to surface cure, because it's going to be sealed on the inside of the mold, and eventually the fiberglass over the back of it's going to seal it. So that changes the whole game there, because you mask up the inside of that item that's in the mold, and then as you spray a color of gel coat, you go ahead and peel your next layer of tape, which exposes more raw fiberglass. Then you spray your next color of gel coat over the old color and the new raw area, peel your masking for the next color, so on and so forth. Now, since I'm spraying this on the surface and not on a mold, I have to use a wax additive, so that way the surface of the gel coat is airtight and it actually goes and cures. Now that's fine, but that makes it more difficult, because if I were to spray the whole area with the gel coat and then it cures, I have to scuff it so that way the next layer of gel coat will adhere properly. I can't leave it wet and mask on top of it because it's wet. So this is where it gets complicated. So I have this piece here, and this is actually the wood that I cut out for where the pump goes through on the back of the transom, and it still has the 1708 that's over it. I have a layer of chopped mat that I did put on it when I was working on the back of it, knowing I'd do a test panel, and I've sanded that smooth with 80 grit. Now what I have planned to do to this panel is I'm going to go ahead and mask this panel up, and I'm going to create 5 sections on this panel. I'm only going to use 2 different colors to keep it simple, so I'm going to basically use a white, off-white mixed color, white, off-white, white. But I'm going to go ahead and spray it in 2 sessions. So I'm going to mask the off-white section, or the off color, and then I'm going to spray the 3 sections with the white gel coat with the wax additive so it cures. So I'm going to go ahead and spray it heavy. I'm going to get a feel for how much I need to put on, what kind of coverage it gets. I'm going to have to do the masking in multiple steps, and I'm going to make designs in the masking because that's part of it. I need to see if I can follow back over those designs. Once that's done and cured, I'm going to pull the masking off the panel, and then I'm going to try to reverse mask all those designs and leave the exposed areas raw, mask off the white areas I just put on, and spray those other areas with a different color and let that cure. Once that's all said and done, then I'm going to come back, I'm going to go ahead and sand this and polish it, and my goal or my hope is I have full coverage where the 2 colors break through the design smooth with no steps and transitions. So I'm going to go ahead and get this masked up. I'm going to bring you guys right back after it's masked up, and then we're going to go and start throwing some gel on this. So I got it all masked up, and you can see that I did one line with the 1/2 inch fine line tape and another one with 1/4 inch. Now this is going to give me my 5 distinct panels that I was looking for with different shapes to see if my masking method works. It's also going to help me decide if I want to run a 1/2 inch line in between or the 1/4 inch line in between the 2 colors. So we're going to go ahead and get this mixed up and spray it on here. I'm not going to use the same gun that I will be for applying it into the boat. I bought a cheap gun with a bigger tip. I'm not going to use that gun for this small panel, so I know I'm using the wrong gun. We're just going to see how it works, see how it goes, and I'll let you guys know here in a second. All right, so we got our 4 layers of gel coat onto this test piece. I've pulled all the masking tape so you can see the 2 areas that have no gel coat, and I still have clear, nice, crisp, well-defined lines, so that's good because that's really the test that we're doing here. So the next step that I need to do is I need to get some gel coat into these lines, so it's going to be masking all the white off in reverse of how I mask these 2 lines. So I'm going to mask on each side of the lines, mask the entire panel. I'm going to mix up some more gel coat. This time I'm going to just tint it so that way I have some color contrast to be able to see the definition in between the lines. I'm going to try to get the same 4 coats so that way I have roughly the same thickness on those lines on there. Get all this sprayed on, I'm going to let it cure up, and I'll bring you guys back and we'll see what the final product is. Alright guys, so here we are the next day after all the gel's dried up, and you can see it looks pretty good. We have a pretty well defined line. There is a little bit of bleed through here on the edges where it looks a little jagged. I was really fighting the tape getting at the stick, so it actually slid up over here on this side and slid down a little. Therefore you can see this line widens up and some of this tinted gel coat is sitting on top of the white. I need to go ahead and get this sanded down to get the texture sanded down, get the transition between the 2 smooth. And then I'm going to work through the grits and get this closer to a polish, get the buffer out, polish it, and we'll see what the final result is. But so far it's looking pretty promising. It's working mostly like I thought it was going to. I do have one idea we'll talk about at the end where I think I'm going to try something else, maybe improve this. But for now, it's time to sand, get it polished, and see what this final outcome is. Alright guys, moderate success. I'm glad that we're doing this test panel and I'm not just jumping into the boat, because definitely picking up some things, learning, and I actually have some things I'm going to change. But for the results here, we can see that obviously when I was sanding, I went down into the fiberglass all the way through the white gel. Now this happened because I was trying to level out this red oxide with the white. And you can see a good example of what I was fighting. If you look right here, you can see where the red oxide actually has kind of a rolled edge, and there's kind of like a little gap right there in between the white, as opposed to this side where the 2 colors butt up real nicely. Is what happened is when I masked it with the 4 layers of masking stacked directly on top of one another, and then as I peeled them when I applied the gel, it created a rolled edge. And I think I would have been better off with the straight, taller edge. Also, this red oxide was just a little bit lower than the white gel, so I had to sand it down further to get those lines eliminated, and I think those 2 things contributed to this. But in essence, it really got the result I wanted. You know, where there's a little bit of bleed through up here, there was really nothing I could do about that, but I think I'll be able to live with that if that does wind up in the boat. However, because of the sand through here and also that rolled edge where I was kind of fighting, I think I'm going to do one more test. I have just enough gel coat to do so. So I'm probably going to go ahead on this side of the panel. I don't need to do the curvy lines. That I was able to trace that and make that work. So I'm going to go ahead and mask that differently. On one side, I'm going to stack up all 4 layers directly on top of each other like I did before, but I'm going to leave those on for all 4 coats. On the other section that I'm going to try the mask, again, I'm going to do all 4 layers, but I'm going to pull each layer back and overhang it just a fraction. and I'll peel those off in between. And I'm hoping by setting the masking tape with that little bit of an offset, as I apply the gel and peel it back, it's going to prevent that rolled edge and make my line be a little bit more vertical, which I'm hoping is going to help with the sand through and the crispness of that line. So that's enough talking here. It looks like I have some more sanding, masking, and gel to spray. I'll go ahead and get all that done, get it all polished back out, and we can compare the two different tests. Well, I went into this test panel looking for answers to my questions and to prove out a theory of how I can apply this gel coat and what result I would end up with. In the end, I proved my theory that it does work, but I think I actually ended up creating more questions for myself than I actually answered the existing questions. I'm really not any further off on where I was at from before I started this video to where I am now on how I'm going to go about gel coating this bilge of the boat. You can see I got the second test done. I got moderately better results. It's not precisely what I'm looking for. Still had a little bit of that issue with the valleys in between colors. It seemed that taping them with the stagger of kind of peeling each layer of tape back a little bit over the previous layer and leaving all the layers of tape on through all the coats and then peeling them off gave me the best result. Putting all 4 layers of tape directly on top of each other and then doing it wasn't as good. But in the end, it's still not exactly what I'm looking for. I'll go ahead and grab the camera and drop you guys in here, but you'll be able to see real closely in between the colors. There's just a little bit of a crease or a little bit of a line. I was able to sand it smooth and have it all at one surface or one plane, but I'm just not convinced that's the best way to go. Even for this test panel, masking it the multiple times so I could have the buildup in layers was more time consuming than I thought. Honestly, where I'm at right now, I'm kind of back to square one. I can go ahead and I can do the gel coat as I planned here, where I can mask off the areas and kind of panel paint them each individually and remask everything. Multiple layers of the masking tape in between each coats, and would be spraying gel coat that has the wax additive so it's cured and hard in between each time, and then sand down all 3 colors once they're all applied, polish them up. I'm almost leaning towards going and doing it more of like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where I can apply, say, my main pinstripe line that I'm going to do, and then mask that off and apply either color on either side of that line, and then give all 3 colors a scuff and do a clear gel coat over it. Again, that would be using gel coat that has the wax additive, so it's hard each time, so I couldn't do layers directly over them. But I'm also kind of toying with the idea of using a gel coat without a wax additive and then just spraying it, working within the 24-hour window to spray it, let it dry, go ahead and mask out the next color, spray it, let it dry, mask out the 3rd color, spray it, let it dry, and then go ahead and cover the entire thing with clear with the wax additive and then sand and polish that. I think that might be the better route to go, although I don't have much experience with doing that, and my big question that I have is the masking over the gel coat that is not fully cured with a wax additive, so that way the surface will still be tacky and what result I'll end up getting. So what I think I'm going to do, I have some odds and ends still to tackle on this boat, so I think I'm going to go ahead and jump on those. I'm going to just kind of sit and simmer on this gel coat idea. I'm really hoping that some of you that have experience with gel coat can jump in the comment section. Let me know, how would you go about this? I'm really dead set on having the 3 colors in the bilge, and I'm really dead set on having them smooth. I don't want the ridges on them, so I want to find the cleanest, easiest, simplest way, but also I really want a nice looking product. I don't really want to go through all of this work and have something that I won't be happy with. So if you've got a lot of experience spraying gel coat, please jump in the comments. Let me know of what you thought of this test panel and the best way to go about what I'm going to try to do to the boat. I guess until then, I got some odds and ends to do to the boat. We're going to go ahead and tackle those. Then in a couple weeks, the only thing left is to gel coat this bilge, so I'm going to have to make a choice. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video. As always, I appreciate the support. If you liked it, be sure to give me a comment, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We'll see you on the next video.